Buongiorno a tutti e a tutte, e benvenuti e benvenute al webinar Loescher e Anna dal titolo B1 Writing Skills, Write a Good Email. Il webinar rientra nella programmazione dei webinar a supporto della didattica a distanza promossa dalle case editrici Loescher e Anna, tenendo conto delle esigenze didattiche emerse a seguito dell'emergenza sanitaria che obbliga alla chiusura delle scuole. Interverrà oggi qua con noi Thomasin Brelstaff, insegnante madrelingua con più di 20 anni di esperienza nella preparazione degli studenti per le certificazioni Cambridge English, e inoltre autrice per Loescher e editore di numerosi corsi di inglese per la scuola superiore. Non mi rimane che augurarvi buon webinar.
Thank you, Gabriele. And hello, everybody, and a warm welcome to all of you, teachers and students. The aim of this webinar today is to give some advice on how to write a good email at B1 level of the CEFR. I'm going to refer in the course of this webinar to two types of task. So I'm looking at, first of all, a generic task such as you might find in a textbook or in a class test, where you are asked simply to write an email to a friend about a certain topic. The second type of task I'll refer to is the one you'll find in the new updated Cambridge B1 preliminary and preliminary for schools. So that would be the part one task, which is compulsory and which is an email. So I'd like to start off by suggesting 6 steps to writing a good email. And here they are, if I can get my... Here we are. 6 steps to writing a good email. The first one is think. This is always a good piece of advice, whatever sort of task you're doing, I know. But I'll explain more about each step as we go on. Then organize. I'm talking here about organizing the ideas you're going to use in your email. The next step is develop. And here I mean develop the ideas you're going to use. Next, vary your language. So here we're looking at using a variety of language, possibly a wider variety. And then we come on to looking at linking ideas together. And finally, we'll have a look at checking work, what to check work for. These steps apply to generic tasks and to the Cambridge preliminary task. So I think they can be useful in helping students, even at all levels, at least within the B1 spectrum. It helps them to avoid making errors and helps them to maximize their marks. So let's have a look at the first point, which is think. This is an essential step before you start on a task. But what exactly do I mean by it and why is it important? Well, to start with, you need to read the task carefully and think about what is required. Sometimes students are in a hurry to start writing. They read the task quickly, maybe see a word or an expression and think, oh, I know about that, I can write about that, and they start writing. But the danger is they may not have realized that they haven't really understood what they have to write about exactly. So what they write may be irrelevant to the task. They write off topic, so about something different. So here's the next slide will show us, talking about read the task carefully. Here are the points to remember. make sure that you understand what you have to write. And if you write off topic or miss something out, you'll lose marks. For example, at B1 preliminary and preliminary for schools, part of the mark the examiner gives you for content is for content, so what the email contains. To get a good mark for content, you need to address all the points in the task and not include irrelevant points. So, you read the task carefully, and it's also useful to underline the important words, the key words in the task, because this will help you focus on what you need to write about. Let's look now at a generic task type. Here it is. This is one that I wrote, but it's like what you might find in a textbook, or maybe a teacher might use in a class test. Now, what I'd like you to do, I'm going to make you do some work now. I'd like you to decide which words you think are the key words here. Which are the important words that you need to underline? So if you'd like to type your suggestions, your ideas in the chat box now. So just choose a couple of words in this task which you think are keywords and type them into the chat box. There we've got some coming up there. Plans for summer holidays. Next summer holidays, I can see. Yeah. And we've got words like ask and suggest as well. Summer visit. Place to visit. Yep, some more people saying suggest as well. Okay. Yeah, so we've got most of the ideas in there now. So let's have a look at what I underlined. I underlined these words. Now, this is not the only way to do it. Different people will have different ways of working. But to give you an idea, I thought friend was important because it tells me that it's an informal email and I need to use an informal style. In the first point, I thought plans for the next summer holidays is important because it tells me that I've got to write about a future event. Ask your friend about his or her holiday plans is, again, it's going to be about the future. Now here I could have underlined ask. In fact, many of you suggested ask, and that's a good idea because it tells us what function we're having to fulfill. And suggest a place. I underlined visit in your country because you need to write about the country that you come from. And remember that country in English refers to a nation. It can be confusing for Italians with the word paese, which also applies to a small town or a village. Now, the last one which I underlined, which I don't think anybody suggested, but I may have missed, is the word limit. It's important for you to understand how many words you need to write. And it says here about 150 words. So aim for that and try not to go too far under or over. So we found our keywords. Now, one word about this, the word limit. Students often ask me, does it matter if I've written a lot more words? Obviously, if it's a class test, only your teacher can answer this question. But if you're studying for something like the Cambridge preliminary or preliminary for schools, the answer is that you should try to write the number of words they ask, because if you write too little, it's probable that you haven't answered all the points in the question. On the other hand, if you write a lot more, you'll probably write things which are not relevant to the task, and you may lose marks for content. Also, the examiner might not, if you really wrote a lot, they might not mark all of the email that you've written. Remember, examiners have to mark a lot of scripts in a certain amount of time. So if you've written twice as much, that would take the examiner twice as long to mark, and it's not really acceptable. So don't write too much, because you will waste time and effort. Okay, the next part of this first point, which was think, is to think of some ideas for your email, to make some notes. So I'd like you now to think about what sort of things would we need to write about in this email. We've got 3 points here. The first point, tell your friend about your plans for the next summer holidays. The first thing that comes into my mind is to say where I'm going to go. Have we got any other ideas about what we might write for that first point? So if I say where I'm going, what other points might you write about? Write your ideas into the chat box. Yep, there's some coming up there. Where, when, what, who with, how long, nice one. What I'm going to do. Yeah. Yeah, these are the sort of things. So you're going to talk about like when, who you're going with, maybe how you're going to travel, what you're going to see, what you're going to visit, what you're going to do. And if we turn to the second point, which says ask your friend about his/her holiday plans, there you're going to have to think about a form for this question. You might go for something like, are you going on holiday? Or where are you going to go? And finally, for the third point, we've got suggest a place for your friend to visit in your country. Here you're going to name a place, obviously. Let's have a look now. The next slide will show you a little, some notes I made in response to this task. Oops. Bring it on. There we are. Just some quick notes that I made. So in response to the first point, I put next summer, Barcelona, mum, dad and best friends, stay in a flat, travel by car. Second point, I can choose one of these ways of asking a question. For the final point, I've put Sardinia, even though I'm not originally from Italia, but I put an Italian example for you. And in this final point here, I've actually put in some more points. I've already started to think about how I can develop this point. Because one thing we don't want to do is just answer the question with one word, like Sardinia, or even, I think you should go to Sardinia. We need to give some detail, a reason, a reason for your opinion, maybe some details about the place. So let's move now on now to the second point in the list, which I said I'd look at with you. This is organize. Now, here I'm referring to organization of what you're going to write. And this is important because an organized piece of writing is much easier for the reader to understand. It's easier to read and the message is communicated more clearly. So let's have a look at some aspects of organization. These are some of the things we need to think about. You need to decide on the order of those ideas we wrote down. Well, in this type of task, this is not really a big issue because you can follow the order of these points in the original task. So that's not much of a problem. You will need to think about paragraphs. How many paragraphs will you have? Now, paragraphs are important because they show that you know that you're writing on one topic, and then in the next paragraph you're writing on another part of the topic. So you should use paragraphs in your writing. If you think also about how many words you will use in each paragraph, this will also help you to not write too much or too little. Finally, you need to think about how to start and finish the email. Probably you already know how to do this. You already know many ways on how to do this. But we'll have a little look at that in a moment. But it is important to start and finish your email in an appropriate way, because this shows your teacher or your examiner that you know how to lay out an email and that you're using the correct level of formality or informality in your writing. Okay, let's just look again briefly at this slide here. Now, looking at this task again, let's say we're going to start off with about 10, maybe 15 words for a little opening paragraph. And we're probably going to use a few words as well for a closing paragraph, a salutation. How many words are we going to have left for the middle bit, and how would you divide those up? So let's work it out first of all, how many words we've got left for the middle bit. Let's say we use about 25 words on the opening and the closing together. That leaves us about 125 words for the 3 main points. How would you divide that up between? I can see people have already started putting their ideas in the chat box. Yeah. Okay, so how would you divide it? Oh, yeah, there we've got one up there, 50 plus 25 plus 50. Yeah. So fewer for the question. Obviously, asking a question is going to take less time and fewer words. If I just go forward again, let me show you. This is a rough plan that I made. So I've got about 15 words for my opening, and the second paragraph here is going to be the first point in the task about my plans for my summer holiday, and I've given that about 70 words. In the third paragraph, I've actually put together my question to my friend about their plans and my suggestion about a place to visit. You wouldn't necessarily have to put those together. I decided to do it like that because the question was just going to be one sentence. And I thought it looked a bit sad all on its own. And it also is about the same topic as the suggestion. It's still all about my friend's holiday. So I put those together. And then finally, I got about 10 words for my closing and salutation. There's no fixed way of doing this, but the point is, do it before you start to write. If you do this, you will avoid writing too much or too little. You will avoid also going off topic, and you will save time. So I really do recommend it very strongly. Write a little plan. Now, even those of you who may be taking an examination on the computer, for example, like Cambridge B1 preliminary, although you're writing into the computer, you will have a piece of paper by your side. Take a pencil with you into the exam, and you can make your plan on the piece of paper before you start to write. So that's important to know. So make a plan. It only takes you about a minute or so, and it will save you time. Now, I've mentioned opening and closing. So let's look briefly at different ways of doing these. Ways of starting an email. What expressions do you know for starting an email? Would you like to put some into the chat box? This is, yeah, I'm talking about like an informal email for a friend. Yeah, we've got dear, hi. Hi, hi, hi. Hi seems very popular. Yeah. I note there's some, Lorena says that in the Cambridge examinations, extra papers are not allowed. That is correct. You cannot take any paper into the exam with you, but you will have a piece of paper which has your code for entering into the software to do the exam written at the top. And you can use that for writing your plan or writing any rough work or anything you like. So just to specify that. Okay, so we've got quite a few. Here. These are the ones I put in. Most of you got hi, hello, dear, hi there. Yeah. It's going to be an informal email unless it's, if it's, so you'd use the person's first name. Now, if you're given that person's name in the task, use it. If you're not given a name and you're just told to write to a friend, don't write dear friend, invent a name. So the most formal thing you might be asked, for example, at preliminary, it can sometimes happen, is to write a letter to a teacher or someone like that. So it might be dear Mr. Smith or dear Mrs. Jones, but not very formal, no dear sir or madam or anything like that. And closing an email, here we've probably got more choice. What ways do you know for closing an email? Would you like to type some into the chat box? Okay, we've got might be some best wishes. Yeah. All the best is a nice one I can see coming up there. Bye, take care. Yeah. Some nice ideas here. Cheers as well. I really must go. That's a nice one. Yeah. Bye-bye. Yeah. Okay, some great ideas there. Let me have show you what I thought of. I thought of these ones. Bye for now. All the best. Best wishes. Take care. Write soon. One thing I noticed that students often write me soon. It's not really used very much in English. I mean, I'm talking British English here. I don't know about all the different Englishes spoken in the world, but usually we just write soon or reply soon. Or if you want to use a few more words, hope to hear from you soon. Or if you're going to see the person, you can write see you soon as well. Or other things, lots of love and hugs. These are all good ways for finishing an informal email. So like an email to a friend. If you got an email to somebody like a teacher, so you'd want to be quite polite, maybe the best one here would be best wishes. Okay, but one final point. When you are writing your email, if it's an informal email to a friend, sign with your first name. Don't write your surname at the end of an informal email. If you were writing to a teacher, maybe you could put your surname, but usually teachers know us well enough not to need to use surnames. But it's important because it's part of the convention of writing an email. So if you don't sign your name, your email is missing something and you might lose a mark. So we've looked at think and organize. Now let's move on to look at develop. And here I'm referring to developing your ideas. What exactly do I mean and why is it important? Let's have a look. So by develop, I mean expand your main points. And you can do this by giving examples, reasons, opinions, experiences, etc. If you think back to the point about the place I was recommending for a holiday, Sardinia, I'd already started to expand a bit there by thinking about the sea, the food, the people. Now, why is it important to develop and expand the ideas? Well, it will help you to use a wider range of language. So different words, vocabulary, and it can provide the opportunity to use different tenses and verb forms. So this can impress the examiner. You make a good impression if you use a wider variety of language. Let me give you an example of this. Okay, I said the one about Sardinia. If I expand that a bit to talk about the people, I can come in with some adjective combinations, friendly, kind. I can talk about the food. I can bring in more things like delicious. I could talk about the sea, lovely sandy beaches. So I'm expanding the language that I'm using. So when you develop your ideas, you will automatically give yourself the opportunity to expand the language you're using as well. Another example from the same task about the future holiday plans. So if I have to tell you about my future holiday plans, I'm going to use probably future, future simple, be going to, maybe present continuous, but I can use some others. For example, if I say next summer we're going to Barcelona, I've never been there before, but 2 years ago, my friend went and she loved it. So here, without going into too much detail about when my friend went and why she loved it, just mentioning it, I have used the past simple and the present perfect simple. I've never been there before, but 2 years ago my friend went and she loved it. I don't want to write too much about that because I would become irrelevant to the task. But just mentioning it helps me to use and to show that I can use a wider variety of tenses and verb structures. Now, this brings me on to the next point, which is, in fact, not that bit, vary your language. So, vary your language. As I've already mentioned, use a range of vocabulary, expressions, and structures. Avoid repeating the same words and expressions where possible. Use some descriptive words such as adjectives and adverbs. Now, let's practice this a bit by looking at some alternative ways of saying the same thing. For example, in emails, we're often asked to write about our likes and dislikes. And sometimes students can repeat many times, I like, I don't like. Can you think of some alternative ways to express the idea, I like? Would you like to type your ideas into the chat box? There's a nice one there from Deborah, I'm fond of, I like that. Daniela has come in with, I'm keen on, I love, I'm into. My goodness, you're ready. Yeah. I'm mad about, I like that one. Yeah, some lovely ideas there. Here are some of the ones that I got. So it's really important to have some alternative ways to say something like I like. And you can modify these as well. You can say things like I'm quite keen on, or I'm really keen on, I'm into, or I'm really not into. So if you're writing an email and when you're maybe rereading it again at the end and you see you've written I like 2 or 3 times, you can go back and change a few of those to show you've got a wider range of vocabulary. Now this is maybe a little bit more complex because this time we've got a whole sentence and we'd like to expand it a bit to show that we've got more variety of language. The sentence is, I love going to the beach. Sorry, it's 2 sentences actually, I can't count. I love going to the beach. I'll spend all my days on the beach with my friend. Okay, the examiner might think, okay, I love with ing form, good, got the word beach, and spend my days, okay, but I want a bit more from a B1 student. So you need to try to maybe be more precise about what exactly you're going to be doing there. And in that way, you'll be using a bit more language. Now, somebody's written here, going to the seaside is awesome. Oh, I like that word. Yeah. I'll sunbathe. Yeah, you're getting the idea. You can bring in some more activities, be more precise about what you're doing, and maybe you could come up with something like this. This is the version I did for those of us who like to relax on holiday. I absolutely adore lying on the beach. So my friend and I are planning to spend all our days there sunbathing and swimming. Absolutely adore instead of just love. And lying, I meant to write that in red too. Sorry, I forgot. Lying is a more interesting, different verb to just going to the beach. I've used the word there to refer back to beach. So I'm not repeating the word beach. And I brought in the word sunbathing, as many of you suggested. This was the version I did for people who are more active. I'm really keen on beach volley, so my friend and I are planning to spend a lot of time playing that. When we feel too hot, we'll go for a swim. Again, I've replaced love with I'm really keen on. I've used the word that to refer back to beach volley, so I'm not repeating myself. And I've added in a bit more information, which has allowed me to use a different verb, feel, and hot with a modifier too. So, so when you try to be a bit more, give more detail, you will use a wider range of language, which is the aim, which is what you want to show your teacher or your examiner. These are just examples, but I hope they give you an idea of how you can sort of upgrade the variety of language you use in your writing. Let's move on to the next point. Linking ideas. Most of you, I think, are aware of what linkers are and will already use them. But let's have a look at some examples first. Here are some of the things we're talking about. Use linkers to show how your ideas relate to each other. So if you're adding some more information, or if you're contrasting what you just said, if you're expressing a condition. At the simple level, simple linkers include things like and, or, but, so, because. And these, I think, all students at B1 know them and use them regularly. But higher level linkers include words like although, however, what's more. There are lots more of these as well. Other linkers might be to do with time, like when, while, if, as soon as. They'll help your writing to read more fluently, to flow better, and they'll help you to join different clauses together to make slightly longer sentences. So a little task for you now. 2 sentences. I wanted to link them together. The weather wasn't great. We went out for some walks. Now these 2 sentences are in contrast because usually when we go for a walk, we like to have nice weather. At least I do. Even though I'm English and I'm used to walking in the rain, I prefer it when it's sunny. So usually we could, on a simple level, we can put it together like this. The weather wasn't great, but we went out for some walks. Or we went out for some walks, but the weather wasn't great. Which, in fact, I can see you're already making your suggestions. You're well ahead of me. I was going to ask you, which higher level linkers could we use? And we've got a nevertheless there, although, however, another although, though. Yeah. Even if, nice one. In fact, you've thought of all, and we've got a despite there as well. Nice one, Daniela. Let's have a look at what I thought of. I made these 3 sentences. Although the weather wasn't great, we went out for some walks. We went out for some walks, even though the weather wasn't great, etc. So try to use 1 or 2 of these in your writing. If you put in a but, see if you can put in a however or an although in place of it. Now, moving on from this, I want to have a quick look at B1 preliminary for schools task. These now have a specific format which looks like this. You have an email. In this case, the email is actually from a teacher, and you have written some notes on the email. Here there are 4 of these little notes, and there's a line pointing to the part of the email that's referred to. Now you need to write an email in reply to this one. So, let's have a look. We need to think of, let's go back. We need to think of, if we look at the first point, it says, I'd like our class to have a party to celebrate the end of the school year. And your comment on there is great. But can you think of another way to say great? Because if you put great, the examiner will know that you can copy the word great, but they won't know that you understand it or that you can find another word for it. And you've already found loads. Wonderful, awesome, fantastic, yeah. So use a synonym, or better still, put it in a sentence, because if you put it in a sentence, you'll show that you can write different structures, such as what a wonderful idea to organize a party, or I'm really pleased that you've decided to organize a class party. We've got a present perfect in there as well, yeah? Whereas if you just put fantastic, there's a lot less for the examiner to assess. The next point says we could either have a party in the classroom or we could go to the park. What would you prefer to do? And the note here is explain. So here we'd be looking at finding a different way to express what would you prefer. In the task, we've got the expression would prefer to. But if we're going to write something, we could write something different. We could even use an expression like I'd rather, or in my opinion, it would be nicer to whatever. So we've used a different expression to the one in the task. We've used our own words. In the third point, we have to make a suggestion for activities and games. Here we need expressions for making a suggestion. And some of you are already putting those in there. What about why don't we, etc. So a couple I put here, we could play, what about organizing, why don't we? So this is the general idea here. You need to find a different way to express what's in the task. Use your own words as far as possible. Obviously, you can't change every word from the task. You can't maybe change the word party, for example. So don't spend hours trying to think of another word for party. But where it is possible, use your own words. Now I'm just going to click on a couple because otherwise we'll be a bit... So you can see, again, you can take your structure from the task, answer the points in the order they are in, and use the task to guide your paragraphs. And you should be okay. Now, the very last point on my list was check carefully. And here are some pointers for checking. Read the email carefully. Reread it. Read it again at the end. Check for spelling mistakes, grammar errors. Check you've used a variety of language. And try to include some adjectives, adverbs, linkers. Check your handwriting is legible. Students, be kind to teachers and examiners. they have to read a lot of stuff. And if your handwriting is really difficult to decipher, they have a hard time. And especially for examiners, you need the examiner to feel good when they're reading your emails and your writing. If you're writing on a computer, take special care, because I find that it's easier to make typing errors, typos, when you're digiting the words onto the keyboard. It's easier and it's more difficult to find them on the screen. So read it slowly, read it carefully, and correct any errors as you go along. Now, I believe we're about time up here. I can't believe it's gone so quickly. So I'm going to move on down and, oops, I've gone 1, 2, it's not goodbye yet. Before that, I'm going to ask you if you have any questions to ask me about anything I've said today, or any aspect of writing an email for tests and for examinations. So type your questions, if you have any, into the chat box. Sylvia is asking if we have to get students to write in paragraphs in B1 too. Yes, I think that something, even though it's a short piece of writing, like in the case of the preliminary, it's 100 words, get them to write in at least 2 or 3 paragraphs. It is important. It shows that they can organize their thoughts and their ideas. And it helps them as well if they're using things like linkers. And it is good training for the future, because when our students do B1, we hope they'll go on and do B2, and it's definitely important at B2. Alors, Lorena asked how to count words when we use contractions, etc. Yeah, I'm actually wondering about this, because in certain exercises in Cambridge exams, contracted words are counted as 2 words. But now that we're counting words on the computer, computers count them in a different way. So I think basically it doesn't matter too much, because if we go over or under by a few words, it's not a problem. I mean, the computer, if you're using a computer, that will count the words for you as you're writing. Definitely in Cambridge preliminary, the computer counts you the words, and it shows you how many words you've written so far, so you don't need to worry about that. A comment from Stefania is, the more you write, the more mistakes you can make. Well, I don't know how everybody marks things, but from looking at the criteria in the Cambridge handbook for the preliminary, it seems that students are giving credit for being ambitious in their language. So I encourage students to be ambitious. Don't just stick to the really simple structures and vocabulary that you're 100% sure of. Be ambitious. Try to use some more complex language, a wider range of vocabulary, because you'll be given credit for that. You'll be given marks for that. Whereas if you stay at a lower level, you can't get a higher mark. You must at least attempt it. Even if it's not perfect, it shows that you can communicate at a higher level. Yeah, there's more questions about contracted forms. How many more words? Yeah, it's difficult for me to say that. I think in Cambridge exams, if it says 100 words, you should try to write. I think now it says about 100 words. I would say try to make it between 100 and 110. Don't go above that. Yeah. Christina is asking, do students have to write their words at the end of their writing? No, they don't have to write how many words they've written. Lorena asks me about which grammar structures should a B1 student know. You can actually get the Cambridge preliminary and preliminary for schools handbooks, which are available on their website. Actually gives you a list of language that they should know, and they also publish a list of vocabulary that students should know at B1. So there's lots of useful information on there. For grammar structures, yeah, I think you should be able to use the present perfect, past simple, present simple, the continuous forms, be used to, things like that. Any more questions out there? Someone missed it at the beginning, I can't remember. Gabriele says we've got time for one more question. What about short forms? Silvana says, yeah, short forms, as I said, I'm not 100% clear on how to count those now because a computer counts them differently. But it really doesn't matter, if you're 5 words above or below the limit. Somebody's asking about the use of the word whom. Whom is generally only used in quite formal language, I would say. That's in answer to Alessandra.
Ok, thank you Thomasin. Ringrazio la docente e tutti voi per l'attenzione.